Today we have a speaker, Dr. Iraj Khodadoost, who will share some of his long-time wisdom and experience in the faith in his talk. Dr. Khodadoost is from Tehran, Iran, and he's lived in Georgia for the last 40 years or so. And he's a retired professor in accounting, and we're looking very much forward to what he will share with us this morning. Welcome.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
As we say as Baha'is, Allah. What I wanted to talk about today is the topic of associating with people of all faiths in a spirit of amity and concord. As I was walking here, I noticed that you have that on the sign as well. The sign that is outside here. And that, of course, begins right here and right among the few of us who are here. I don't know whether you have that tradition or not, but I would like to ask you, if you would, to stand up and shake hands with the person next to you, the next person in front of you, and get to know each other for the next 2-3 minutes. That makes my work easier, because this is what the talk is all about. Okay, this was the beginning of my talk, the most important part of my talk, that we need to get to know one another. To get to know one another, which means everyone on the planet. That's eventually our goal, right? Because our vision is oneness of the whole human race, right?
Reality.
Because we believe in the oneness and wholeness of the entire humankind. And we also believe in the oneness of the fundamentals of all religions, right?
Yeah.
And we don't believe in the kind of politics that we see these days, right?
Right.
Divisive, hateful, opposite of what God wants from us, right?
Right on.
How blessed we are as Baha'is, and those of you who are friends of Baha'is, that he told us 150 years ago that that's not the way to operate. That's not the way to deal with one another. I'm sorry. And that we have to find a better way, right? Because partisan politics, as we see today, is divisive and hateful, whereas we are children of the same God and we need to come together. We need to find a way to reconcile our differences. And all of that begins with associating with people of all faiths in a spirit of amity and concord, which is the instructions of Baha'u'llah. We read this in the tablets of Baha'u'llah. So today we want to just, whatever we need to know was in these beautiful songs and in these beautiful prayers that we read. So I have nothing new to offer except to reinforce and share with you what I'm trying to do, and then hear from you what you are doing on the path of the oneness, bringing to reality oneness of the humankind. You know, when we grow up, depending on what tradition we are in, many times it's trial and error, right? The father tells us something, mother tells us something, school tells us something, we hear something on radio and so on, and we do whatever we think is right. Until we come to the holy writings for this age. All holy writings in the essence are one and the same. But through time, people have distorted them. I usually say it in 2 ways. One, through time, people have distorted them. And how do they distort them? There was one Jesus Christ, one faith, and how many divisions of Christianity do we have today? Hundreds upon hundreds, right? Many of them opposing one another. Many of them disagreeing with everything that the other group who was across the street is saying, right? That wasn't the intention of Jesus Christ. That wasn't the intention of Moses or Muhammad or any of them. So we know, that's one fact, that through time, not gone, but people manipulate and change and divide and then create something which was not the purpose of God, of course, which is oneness. So that's one aspect of it. What's the other aspect? The other aspect is that as we, as human beings, advance and progress, we have to have new teachings suitable to the time. These are the two aspects, right? We honor all faiths, we honor all traditions, but we have to be aware of these two facts. One is that people have manipulated and changed, and therefore, when a house is divided, which is those houses, in the name of Islam and Christianity and Judaism and so on, it does not serve the purpose that God intended us to do. So that's one aspect. And the other aspect that is that some of those teachings are not suitable to our time. We have to reflect on that. Of course, all the teachings on love and unity and kindness and compassion and forgiveness is all one and the same in all faiths. But because human beings were not ready, we see passages which condone slavery, for example, in all these holy books, right? It condones slavery. Of course, we all know that that is not suitable for today. In all these scriptures, in one way or another, we see that inequality between men and women is a way of life. Not that Jesus did know better, or Moses did know better, but that was the tradition of the time, and they had more important issues to deal with, and they wanted to leave it. That's the way I try to understand it, the way it was. But Baha'u'llah, there's one passage from Baha'u'llah I always remember. He says, I have obliterated from the book all passages which were not conducive to unity. And they led to disunity and discord, right? So imagine that. He has brought us teachings for unity, and we need to deepen on them. And while we go in the process of deepening, it has to become part of our life. Because unless and until it becomes part of our life, it is just beautiful words, right? It's just like beautiful poetry. So it has to become part of our life. And so I want to discuss in terms of, on the question of associating with people of all faiths in a spirit of amity and concord, to bring about this unity, what we are doing in that respect. Another passage from Baha'u'llah that I tried to remember and tried to do the best I can to emulate it is this passage that the essence of faith, what does he say? The essence of faith is fewness of words and abundance of deeds, right? So we may memorize all the scriptures and we may be able to stand up here and talk about all of them. But the essence of it is that, do I put it into practice? So we always need to remember that the best of people are not necessarily those who speak eloquently. It's not those who know a lot, but those who really practice it, right? Who put it into practice on a daily basis. So one of those things in terms of putting it into practice on a daily basis is again associating with people of all faiths in a spirit of amity and concord. So as I'm talking, you just go to your own inner being as is this what I do? Of course, we do it in different ways. How many of you are still in school? Either taking courses part-time or full-time. So well, most of you are working. How many of you are working in one way or another? Most of you guys are working. And those of you who are working are retired. So those of us who are working, you are associating with people. But is it with amity and concord? Every time there's a conflict, it is not amity and concord. Every time we have a fight with the boss or with the employee, it's not amity and concord. So if we have this on our desk, my job, Baha'u'llah says, is associating with people of all faiths in a spirit of amity and concord. So every time conflict and contention comes along, again, there's another passage. He tells us that we shouldn't do it. We should try to get away from that conflict and concord. We read it in our Ruhi Book 1, right? So first and foremost then is in school, at our place of work, we associate with people. But it better be in a spirit of amity and concord. We should remember that on a daily basis. Otherwise, we are Baha'is in name, but we're not Baha'is in action, right? He says, in order to bring about peace on earth as it is in heaven, as Jesus told us, or as he says, bringing about the golden age of humanity, is to do this on a daily basis. Now, what I'd like to share with you is that what do we do beyond this? We are at work, we associate with people, we are in school, we associate with people, and we try to do our best to be the best of behavior so that we don't get into fight and conflict and division. So that part is understood. We all understand that. But then, what else do we do? Now, based on my own trial and error, I'm an old man of the past 70 plus years, and whatever I've learned, these are the few things that I do. One thing I thought about a few years ago is that, okay, I have to have a card, business card, or beyond business card, because I'm retired now, is that I have a card that gives my name and my address, my phone number, and my email address. But so what? It would cost me a few more dollars if I put the message of Baha'u'llah in the back of it. And any time that I talk to someone and I make that connection, it's easy to say that this is me, but what is important is in the back of it. Make sure you read it. And if you'd like, give me a call. And so what it says in the back of this is, there's one God, there's one human race, and there's one religion which is progressively revealed to guide mankind toward harmony, unity and peace, the Baha'i faith. The span of the earth is one country and mankind its citizen. Baha'u'llah, the prophet founder of the Baha'i faith. So I share that with them. That's one thing I try to do. The other thing that I've learned to do, more so in the last half of my life rather than the first half of my life, which means the 40 years that you were talking about, is that I waited and waited for people to come to me, knock at the door and talk about Baha'i faith, but it seldom, if ever, happens. I went to this neighbor and that neighbor, and a couple of them confirmed positively. A couple of them came to my house. A couple of them rejected. Said, no, we don't want to have anything to do with this, which is fine. In that process, I learned that every word that we utter should be measured, right? And every word that we utter should take into account, as Abdu'l-Baha tells us, the capacity of the listener, right? So if I go and knock at the door and say that I'm your neighbor, I'm a Baha'i, I want you to come here, maybe that's not good enough. Maybe I should knock at the door and say, I'm Iraj, I'm your neighbor. Of course, what's your name? What do you do? And then go through the process, and then when the time comes, tell him also about the Baha'i faith. Sometimes when you just do this and want to tell him everything about Baha'i faith, you turn them off, right? So that's not the way to do it either. That reminds me now of, I attended a conference long time ago, 1971, in Africa, in Liberia. There was an intercontinental conference. And guess what? One of the hands of the cause, that I'm sure all of you know about her, Ruya Khanum was there. The wife of the guardian of the Baha'i faith, Shoghi Effendi. And sometimes she joked and sometimes she was very frank. And she was talking, there were a lot of Persian Baha'is. And she was, in what she said, she wasn't very complimentary, but I always remember it. She says there are two kinds of Persian Baha'is. One kind is that they go to another city, another town, another country, but they go in a group of 10, 15, 20 people. Husband and wife and children and uncle and aunt and everybody else. So they all go together. But then because they go together, 2-3 times a week, they invite one another and they eat a lot of rice and the stews that they had, she knew the name. Khoresh badem jon, khoresh khorme sabzi, if you know some of these Persian food. They're happy with that. But that doesn't get us anywhere. That doesn't create that unity that Baha'u'llah is talking about. It's just harmony among yourself, which is fine, but that's not good enough. Shows this is one group of Persian Baha'is. And of course, that probably applies to a lot of people too. You may have a lot of family and friends, and you get together once a week. You have a lot of food and get together, which is fine, which is good. But that's not good enough. That's not going to bring about oneness of the humankind. So then she says, the other group of Persian Baha'is that I've come across is that they're so enthusiastic about the Baha'i faith. And then she said, but they don't remember that Baha'u'llah was a divine physician. And he brought all the prescription for the ills of mankind. But now these Baha'is have all the prescription in their pocket and they go and dump it in the mouth of that patient, and then he dies in the process because it's too much medicine. I always remember that was 1971. But the point she was making is that if you're all to yourself and getting together and you go to feast and this, that's fine. But that's not good enough. And if you're over enthusiastic and you want to give all the medicine at one time, that's not good either. We have to see what the person needs. We have to start with ourselves. But am I ready to share? Am I worthy of sharing the message of Baha'u'llah the best I can as an individual? Which means I'm in a prayerful mode. I don't expect anything because this is his faith. All I want is to share this beautiful message with the humankind. And it is between that individual and Baha'u'llah to accept it or reject it. Ultimately, this is the message of God for humankind. And ultimately we'll get there. But in the process, we need to do our job. We need to do our job. So, in that process of going to neighbors and having a little response, not enough response, I have to go to them. It's not working, it's not. You know, I came to this country 50 years ago, and I was a student at New York University. And anywhere I went, anybody asked me about what is your religion, I said I'm a Baha'i. Almost nobody had heard about Baha'i faith. How is it today? probably 10%, I would say. When you go to your neighbors and talk about Baha'i faith, I'm a Baha'i, maybe 1 or 2 in 10 would know something about it. But still, majority don't know anything about it. I started thinking about 30 years ago that it's because I'm not doing my job.
Okay.
I'm just sharing with you as to what I tried to do. And maybe you're doing it, and if you're not doing it, maybe that could be a good, maybe you may consider it as a possible suggestion to do as well. So what I tried to do then, I started 30 years ago, but it became bolder and bolder as time went on. I went to this church, I went to that church, I went to this synagogue, I went to that mosque. And there I was new, they all knew each other, they didn't know me. So they started asking about me. Who are you? Where did you come from? What church do you go to? I don't have any church. Who is your minister? We don't have ministers. You don't have ministers, you don't have a priest. What kind of religion is that? Well, we're all equal. There's nobody higher. So I would even talk to the minister and all that. So those of them who were more open-minded, they said, will you come again? I'd like to hear more about your faith and this and that. And I'll give you one of them in particular, one out of probably 10, 15 places that I've spoken. Off and on, I keep going back and I said, this guy probably has something to say. So eventually they say that, would you like to be, you don't have preacher, but would you like to speak one time in our church? I said, fine. And then I've spoken at Unity Church, Unitarian Church, Episcopalian Church, Methodist Church, a lot of churches in our area. So they invite, and they invite for one-time speakers. So if they like it, and then I have learned gradually not to give all the medicine at one time, just for as much as they can take, for as much as they can take, just gradually. So one of them, the high price for me is a church called Unity North. It is on Sandy Plains Road, where we have the other Baha'i Center too, Baha'i Center for Learning. So I went there probably about 4 years ago, and I befriended them. I would go there off and on. And I got to know the minister and went to their classes of when somebody wants to become a member, they have a class. I went to their class to see exactly what their way of thinking is and all that. And then he invited me to give the sermon for the regular church. And it's a large church. Between 100 to 300 people attend their church. So there were over 100 people, 150 people probably. And I gave a 1-hour talk about the faith, and we had music, and we had prayers, everything, the whole service. So we became friends with a number of them. So gradually, I became bold enough to say that, well, if you like, we can also have a class on Baha'i faith for your church. And he said, let me think about it. And he went and spoke to the board of directors, and said they approved it. But I think, they wanted mainly the management of the firm, of the church, to come to the class. So we had a 6-hour class on the essentials of the Baha'i faith for the church, which was mostly the leadership came, and a number of prominent people in the group, which was also a wonderful experience. Then he invited me again and again. Sometimes I just read poetry for them, and so on. And then it came to a point we were really close friends. And so I said, I want to present you with a gift from Baha'is. And what is that gift? I framed a beautiful poster of the House of Worship in Chicago, and said, I want to present it to you and your church, so if you have it, set up a time in your regular service, and I'll come present it to you. So I went and presented the poster, the frame poster of the house of worship. Beautiful. The minister himself held it up. It's all taped. This fellow tapes everything. And so he held it up, and he said, "This is the gift." And I explained the vision of the house of worship, which has 9 sides, representing all faiths, and one dome, which is the oneness of God and oneness of religion. And the congregation loved it, and he put it right in front of his office. And so that house of worship, when you go to Unity Church, it is there. I have other experiences, but I'm just focusing on this experience, which is the very best. Then I'll bring you up to date, and I'll end with this because I'm sharing you this experience. If I can do it, all of you guys can do it because you're more eloquent than I am. I'm still a foreigner. I have an accent and all that. But all of you guys can do a better job. So what happened, it was, I guess, last July. And he called, and he said that I have another spot for you to talk about the Baha'i faith if you want. They have 2 services. One is at 9:15 a.m., the other one is 11:15. 11:15 is more their service. 9:15 they invite others, and it's usually a smaller number come, 100, 150. The large one, 300 to 400 people come. So I said, fine, I accepted it. And then I thought about it, and I called him back. I said, it's wonderful. If you'd like me to do it, I'll do it. But we know each other quite well. And by the way, during this 4 years, sometimes he invites me to lunch, sometimes I invite him to lunch. We become good friends. He's a wonderful man, very open-minded. And then I told him that, I called him again, and I said that I think the better thing to do would be for you and I to go on the stage and converse about these ideals that we have been talking about, and the things I've learned from you and the things you have learned from me and from the Baha'i writings, and chat on the stage. And he thought about it, and right on the phone he said, that's a good idea, let's do it. Let's do it like that. Then a week later he called, and he said, let's do it for both services, which means the main service, which is 11:15, and the 9:15 class. As long as we're doing it, let's do it for both services. I said, fine. But then in the meantime, I didn't want him to be surprised with what I say versus what he says. I said, let me send you some quotes from the Baha'i writings, because I have nothing of my own. I just share the Baha'i message. So I sent him 36 quotes from the Baha'i writings, including a couple of prayers. Unite the hearts of all servants and reveal to them thy great purpose. 2, 3 prayers, 33 other quotes from the Baha'i writings. And I said, why don't you read them so that we know what we're talking about? He called a week later, he says, wow, these are beautiful. Of course, we had talked, I'd given them books. I don't know what books they read, what they don't read. I said, these are beautiful. But this is enough for 6 sessions. So let's choose 6 of them and go on the stage and talk about them. And I'll find equivalent passages in the Bible or in our tradition, which is, Unity has a tradition, which, if you know or not, it began right about the time of the passing of Baha'u'llah, 1893, right the year that Baha'i faith came to this country. Unity began by a couple named Fillmore, who had many ideas of the Baha'i faith. So on the question of the importance of harmony of science and religion, the importance of racial harmony, the importance of gender equality, all of those things they believe in. So it's not hard to talk to them. They just do not know the source. And the source needs to be indicated to them one step at a time, not all at the same time. So that was the most unbelievable experience. I and this minister, who was very eloquent and who sings beautifully, went on the stage on August 28th. And this whole hour of beautiful discussion is taped. And so we went on the stage and talked about the teachings of Baha'u'llah. Not indoctrinating, not telling them, but their minister sharing, and I basically observing. He was saying most of the things. He had read all these passages and he was talking about them. So people have capacity, people have opened up, people are ready. It is our job to go to churches and synagogues and mosques and celebrate the oneness and wholeness of humanity and the oneness of us as religions, and gradually, as they develop the capacity, to share them more and more. So the last thing that happened, and I end with that, is that I invited the leadership and the minister and his wife to the birth of Baha'u'llah and birth of Abdu'l-Baha, which is November 1st and November 2nd, that they will be attending. Thank you very much. You can all do a lot better than what I've done.